Do not rush your eyes. Do not read this like ordinary words. There is a reason you felt pulled here, a reason your breath changed slightly before you even understood why. Something unseen has already stepped closer. Something gentle, ancient, and patient has been waiting for the moment you finally whispered, even if your whisper felt like exhaustion rather than faith. I know where you are right now. I know the exact weight sitting on your chest. I know the thoughts you keep pushing away because they feel too heavy to name. I know how tired you are of being strong without being supported, of believing without seeing, of holding on while everything inside you feels like it is slipping. You did not say many words. You only said, "E Holy Spirit, take over." And that was enough. When you said those words, heaven did not question your worthiness. Heaven did not ask for explanations. Heaven did not wait for you to fix yourself first. The moment you surrendered control, even in desperation, something shifted. I am speaking to you now not because you are perfect, but because you are open. Not because you are confident, but because you are honest. You have been carrying things that were never meant to be carried alone. Responsibilities that slowly turned into burdens. Love that turned into silence. Faith that turned into endurance instead of joy. You kept going because stopping felt like failure. You kept believing because letting go felt like betrayal. But hear me clearly now, asking the Holy Spirit to take over is not quitting. It is the bravest form of trust. You reached the point where your own strength could no longer hold everything together, and that moment was not your breaking point, it was your doorway. You may feel like you are at the edge of something ending, but in truth, you are standing at the edge of something finally beginning without your constant effort. I see how often you replay conversations in your mind, wondering what you should have said differently. I see how you blame yourself for outcomes that were never under your control. I see how you try to protect others from your pain while slowly draining yourself dry. This is why the Holy Spirit is stepping in now, not to judge you, not to rush you, but to relieve you. When the Holy Spirit takes over, things do not always become louder or more dramatic. Often, they become quieter. Thoughts begin to slow. The constant urgency eases. You may not notice fireworks, but you will notice breath returning. You will notice space where there was once pressure. You will notice that the urge to fix everything softens into the ability to rest inside uncertainty without fear. You have been trying to manage outcomes, timelines, reactions, and futures. You thought if you could just understand everything, nothing would hurt so much. But understanding is not the same as peace. Control is not the same as safety. The Holy Spirit does not come to help you control life. The Holy Spirit comes to help you trust life again. There are wounds inside you that words cannot reach. Logical answers could never heal them. Advice bounced off them. Time did not erase them. That is because these wounds were never meant to be healed by effort. They were meant to be healed by presence. By something holy and gentle moving through the places you have avoided because they hurt too much to touch. You may feel unworthy of divine help because of your doubts, your anger, your moments of weakness. But listen to me, the Holy Spirit is not repelled by your mess. It is drawn to it. Light does not avoid darkness, it enters it. And right now, light is entering you in ways you cannot yet measure. Do not be afraid if you feel emotional without knowing why. Do not be alarmed if old memories surface. Do not panic if you feel tired after asking for help. This is not regression. This is release beginning. When the Holy Spirit takes over, what has been buried begins to rise, not to harm you, but to leave you. You are not losing control. You are being carried. There is a difference. You have prayed many times before, but this prayer was different. You didn't come to it with a list of requests or a carefully chosen sequence of words. You came trembling, exhausted, stripped of your own strength. You came at the end of what you could carry. There were no plans left to fix yourself, no strategy left to convince heaven of your worthiness. This prayer was not born from the beginning of Hope, it came from the end of self. That is why it was powerful. Heaven listens closely when the soul no longer tries to sound impressive. When you whisper only the truth, without pretense, without performance, heaven recognizes that sound. It is the sound of surrender, the soft breaking of the human will before divine love. The words may have been few, maybe even silent. But heaven responds more to honesty than eloquence. Not to dramatic tones or perfect posture, but to what your heart finally admits when it can no longer pretend. You thought your prayer was a signal of failure, a sign that you had reached the end of faith. But it wasn't. It was the exact doorway that needed to open. You thought you were collapsing, but you were actually entering alignment. The Holy Spirit does not respond to strength, it responds to surrender. Not because weakness is holy, but because weakness is honest. Is the point where the Spirit finally has space to move freely without your constant interference. You have worried about what will happen next. You have wondered if your surrender meant that life would now spin beyond your control. You fear that silence might mean rejection. You have been scared that giving it to God would mean facing long periods of waiting, of unanswered questions, of feeling forgotten. But the Holy Spirit never takes over just to abandon you afterward. Surrender is not exchange, it is union. Once invited, the Spirit stays not as an occasional visitor, but as an indwelling indwelling presence that begins to reorder things gently, wisely, with foresight that stretches beyond your limited perspective. You may not see the immediate rearranging, but Is unfolding. The Spirit is guiding invisible movements, closing doors that your heart still tries to reopen, detaching you from people whose season in your story has ended, and softening desires you once mistook for destiny. You think these are losses, but they are not. They are layers being peeled away to reveal a life that actually fits your spirit. When people drift away without confrontation, it is not always rejection, sometimes it is divine release. When desires quiet without resistance, it is not apathy, it is recalibration. When opportunities close abruptly, you are being spared from entanglements that would have tangled your soul. The Holy Spirit sees what you cannot, the undercurrent of every desire, every attachment, every choice. It knows what drains you even when you call it love. It knows what distracts you even when you call it purpose. It knows what delays you even when you proudly name it patience. The Spirit is a gentle surgeon. It cuts without cruelty. It removes what poisons you slowly. That is why it often begins by stillness, not by action. At first, this can feel like punishment, because you are used to movement meaning progress. But Heaven's progress is not busy. It is deliberate. Things unseen are being woven. Obstacles are not always enemies, sometimes they are protectors, holding you back from timelines that would destroy your peace. Maybe you feel stuck. Maybe you prayed, cried, and wrestled with your unseen battles, and it seems like nothing outside has changed. But look closer. Beneath what stands still on the surface, foundations have been reinforced. Your internal architecture is being renewed. What you called stagnation was spiritual preparation. What you mistook for divine silence was construction behind the scenes. There are attachments that have been quietly loosened euro, tethers to people, outcomes, or roles you thought were essential to your happiness. You may not yet realize it, but the Spirit is untying you from burdens so that when blessings finally arrive, they won't break you. You are being made strong enough to carry peace. You are being taught how to stay whole in future abundance. You are not late. Not behind. Not forgotten. You were being protected from receiving things before you could hold them without shattering. The waiting did not disqualify you. It insulated you. The silence did not indicate absence. It was the language of alignment, where God teaches you to walk by faith rather than by noise. When the Holy Spirit truly takes over, the transformation begins inwardly. It starts in the way you respond to everyday moments that once unbalanced you. You will notice a soft shift to panic will no longer explode so quickly. The familiar flood of anxiety will be interrupted by a strange sense of calm. The instinct to react will be replaced by the instinct to pause. Not because you stopped caring, but because peace has become your new default. You will sense that not everything requires your defense anymore. Not every misunderstanding requires clarity. You begin to recognize wisdom in silence. You feel boundaries for Minga not ones built through bitterness, but through clarity. These boundaries protect not your ego, but your energy. You stop explaining yourself to those who never wanted understanding. You stop pouring endlessly into spaces that remain empty by choice. You stop shrinking just to avoid conflict. This will feel foreign because you mistaken exhaustion for love. You worn self-sacrifice as identity. But healing changes definitions. It reintroduces you to peace you didn't think you deserved. At first, you might label this new quiet as loneliness, but Eta not. Eta spaciousness. When you no longer chase what depletes you, you finally meet yourself. You begin to sit with your own soul and find it full of truth rather than emptiness. You start to see that not all waiting is wasted and not all silence is void. The Spirit lives in both. Do not rush the process. The Holy Spirit is not in a hurry because nothing built in divine timing needs to be forced. It works deeply, not quickly. It doesn't just mend symptoms, it uproots the seeds that cause them. It doesn't alter only circumstances, it resurrects identity. The Spirit doesn't just want to fix what broke, it wants to teach you who you are so you never hand out the pieces again carelessly. You asked for takeover and takeover means change in unfamiliar ways. Expect to be guided through rest when your instinct is to move. Expect delays that protect your destiny more than quick successes ever could. Expect whispers over thunder, stillness over spectacle. The Spirit speaks more through peace than through pressure. Trust what feels calm, even when it feels slow. Calm is not the absence of progress, it is a sign of alignment. Chaos tempts you to act out of fear, but peace trains you to act from wisdom. Theta why this season of stillness matters it rewires your response to life. Do not try to map your entire future. You are not meant to hold the blueprint, only the next step. Stay open to what today requires. Every divine journey unfolds one breath, one choice, one act of honesty at a time. The Spirit's pace may frustrate the impatient part of you, but that impatience is exactly what is being healed. Heaven is not measuring your worth by your productivity. It watches how you soften instead of how you strive. It watches how you listen instead of how you perform. You are being taught that letting go is not defeat a euro, it is partnership. To release control is not to lose power, it is to share it. Share it with the one who sees beyond sight. You are not alone in this. Even when the nights stretch long and the questions circle like shadows that refuse to leave, even when your own heart feels foreign to you, there is a presence that never once stepped away. The Spirit speaks within you, not above you in some distant, unreachable place. There is no cosmic balcony from which divine voice thunders down in judgment or demand. Instead, it chooses the most intimate chamber possible, the quiet center of your own being. It whispers within your heart a euro, not with dramatic volume, but with the kind of tenderness that only truth wrapped in love can carry. That whisper can be so soft it almost feels like your own thought at first. A sudden breath of calm when anxiety should be winning. A gentle pause before you speak words you would have once flung in defense. A fleeting sense that something deeper than circumstance is holding the fragile pieces of you together. These are not coincidences. They are not random flickers of optimism. They are the language of divine companionship in motion. Every quiet nudge that turns your attention toward kindness when you wanted to withdraw, every unexplainable peace that settles over confusion like morning mist over a restless lake, every soft conviction that tugs you toward greater sensitivity rather than hardness a euro, these are the Spirit a euro's fingerprints, left lovingly on the tender surface of your days. You are being held while things rearrange. Consider that sentence again, you are being held. Not abandoned to sort through the wreckage alone. Not required to engineer your own healing with willpower and clenched teeth. The same Spirit that once exposed your pine a euro, pulling back layers you had carefully bandaged for years a euro, is the very same Spirit now applying balm to those same wounds. What felt like ruthless stripping away was never cruelty. It was precision. The false things a euro, the masks of performance, the brittle armor of self-protection, the illusions of control a euro, had to be removed because they were suffocating the life trying to grow beneath them. Now, in their place, the Spirit is reclothing you in authenticity. Not a new costume, not another role to play, but your own true skin, breathable and real. You are allowed to rest in that truth. Rest. The word itself can feel scandalous when you spent so long believing that love must be earned through exhaustion. But hear it again, you no longer need to prove worthiness to a God who already calls you beloved. The verdict was spoken over you long before you ever drew your first breath, long before the first mistake, the first wound, the first desperate attempt to be enough. That verdict has never been rescinded. It stands unshaken, even while your own inner courtroom continues its endless appeals. You don't need to grasp for control over outcomes already being aligned in your favor not because everything will look perfect on the surface tomorrow, but because the deeper currents of grace are moving toward wholeness on your behalf. Let go of the need to perform strength. Let the shoulders drop. Let the jaw unclench. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to simply be without explanation, without apology, without a 5-point plan to justify your existence in this moment. There is no spiritual productivity quota you must meet. The Spirit is not keeping score of how bravely you white-knuckle your way through the dark. In fact, the bravest thing you may do right now is to stop pretending you have to be brave every second. You may not see it yet. The visible landscape of your life might still look like scattered fragments relationships that ache, plans that dissolved, futures that evaporated. But the takeover is already happening. It is happening in the small, almost imperceptible shifts, the way you pause before reacting to criticism instead of firing back, the way compassion rises more quickly than resentment when you think of someone who hurt you, the way you can now hold silence without panic. Most of all, it is happening in your capacity to love without immediate depletion. Where once love felt like a resource you had to ration, you are beginning to sense that there is a source that replenishes even as you give. That shift alone is seismic. Divine help rarely arrives the way the mind expects. We imagine rescue helicopters, sudden reversals, dramatic exits from pain. We picture situations fixed, people changed, bank accounts filled, bodies healed. And sometimes those things do happen. But far more often the Spirit chooses a quieter, more enduring path, transformation from the inside. It does not always remove the storm, it teaches you to stand steady within it. It does not always change the circumstances, it changes the one living through them. The external world may take time to reflect the renewal happening beneath the surface months, years of but the Spirit always begins at the root. It works in the soil of your inner life first, where no one else can see. Help has already arrived. Not as a dramatic rescue that lifts you out of the fire, but as revelation that lets you see through the flames without being consumed. The problems may still exist for now. The grief may still visit at 3 a.m. The unanswered questions may still sit heavily in your chest. Yet your lens the way you perceive those same difficulties is healing. Colors are slowly returning. Edges are softening. Where once everything felt like threat, now flickers of meaning begin to appear. You are learning. Slowly and sometimes painfully, how to live from your spirit instead of your survival mode. Survival mode kept you alive, spirit mode will teach you how to truly live. That shift changes everything. Stay soft. Stay open. Stay present. Let these words sink slowly, not as instructions you must perform perfectly, but as an invitation you are allowed to grow into. In a world that often praises sharp edges, loud certainty, and relentless control, softness can feel like a risk. You may have learned, over time, to protect yourself by hardening by tightening your expectations, guarding your heart, bracing your body against disappointment. You may have told yourself that strength means endurance without feeling, survival without rest, faith without questions. But this is not the strength heaven asks of you now. The strength being formed in you is quieter, deeper, and far more enduring. It is the strength of something alive, not armored. It is the strength of something rooted, not rigid. Softness is not weakness. It never was. Softness is responsiveness. It is the ability to bend without breaking, to feel without being destroyed by what you feel. Think again of water not because it is a poetic idea, but because it is a living truth written into creation itself. Water yields to the shape of whatever contains it, yet it reshapes everything it touches over time. It does not argue with rock. It does not rush. It does not announce its power. It simply keeps showing up, drop by drop, moment by moment, until even mountains bear its signature. This is the kind of strength being formed in you now. Quiet. Persistent. Unstoppable. When you stay soft, you give the spirit room to move. Resistance often feels like safety, but it blocks the very healing you long for. Armor may keep pain out for a while, but it also keeps life out. Softness allows the spirit to reach places that defenses could never access. Places where grief settled long ago and learned to speak your name. Places where that defenses could never access. Places where grief settled long ago and learned to speak your name. Places where disappointment hardened into expectation, and expectation slowly drained joy. Places where love once knocked and was turned away not because you did not want it, but because you were too tired to risk hoping again. Softness opens the door to those rooms, not to shame what you find there, but to let light in gently, at a pace your soul can bear. Stay open. Openness is often misunderstood. It is not the absence of boundaries. It is not offering yourself endlessly to what harms you. Openness is not saying yes to everything, it is saying yes to what is true. It is the courage to unclench your hands, not because you are careless, but because you trust that what truly belongs to you cannot be lost by letting go. Openness is faith in timing rather than force. It is choosing to believe that what is meant for you will arrive without violence, without manipulation, without you having to betray yourself to receive it. You have clenched your fists for a long time. You clenched them around outcomes, around relationships, around prayers that felt too fragile to survive unanswered. You clenched them around control because control felt like the only way to stay upright. And no one blames you for that. You did what you had to do to survive seasons that demanded more from you than you had to give. But survival is not the same as living. And now, gently, patiently, you are being invited into something more spacious. When your hands open, you may feel exposed at first. Empty. As if something essential has slipped away. But that emptiness is not loss, it is readiness. It is space. It is the posture of receiving rather than grasping. What is not meant for you will fall away when your hands open. What is meant for you will finally have somewhere to land. Help has already arrived. Not as a dramatic rescue that lifts you out of the fire, but as revelation that lets you see through the flames without being consumed. The problems may still exist for now. The grief may still visit at 3 a.m. The unanswered questions may still sit heavily in your chest. Yet your lens, the way you perceive those same difficulties, is healing. Colors are slowly returning. Edges are softening. Where once everything felt like threat, now flickers of meaning begin to appear. You are learning, slowly and sometimes painfully, how to live from your spirit instead of your survival mode. Survival mode kept you alive, spirit mode will teach you how to truly live. That shift changes everything. Stay soft. Stay open. Stay present. Let these words sink slowly, not as instructions you must perform perfectly, but as an invitation you are allowed to grow into. In a world that often praises sharp edges, loud certainty, and relentless control, softness can feel like a risk. You may have learned, over time, to protect yourself by hardening by tightening your expectations, guarding your heart, bracing your body against disappointment. You may have told yourself that strength means endurance without feeling, survival without rest, faith without questions. But this is not the strength heaven asks of you now. The strength being formed in you is quieter, deeper, and far more enduring. It is the strength of something alive, not armored. It is the strength of something rooted, not rigid. Softness is not weakness. It never was. Softness is responsiveness. It is the ability to bend without breaking, to feel without being destroyed by what you feel. Think again of water, not because it is a poetic idea, but because it is a living truth written into creation itself. Water yields to the shape of whatever contains it, yet it reshapes everything it touches over time. It does not argue with rock. It does not rush. It does not announce its power. It simply keeps showing. You may not see it yet. The visible landscape of your life might still look like scattered fragments, relationships that ache, plans that dissolved, futures that evaporated. But the takeover is already happening. It is happening in the small, almost imperceptible shifts, the way you pause before reacting to criticism instead of firing back, the way compassion rises more quickly than resentment when you think of someone who hurt you, the way you can now hold silence without panic. Most of all, it is happening in your capacity to love without immediate depletion. Where once love felt like a resource you had to ration, you are beginning to sense that there is a source that replenishes even as you give. That shift alone is seismic. Divine help rarely arrives the way the mind expects. We imagine rescue helicopters, sudden reversals, dramatic exits from pain. We picture situations fixed, people changed, bank accounts filled, bodies healed. And sometimes those things do happen. But far more often the spirit chooses a quieter, more enduring path, transformation from the inside. It does not always remove the storm, it teaches you to stand steady within it. It does not always change the circumstances, it changes the one living through them. The external world may take time to reflect the renewal happening beneath the surface months, years of but the spirit always begins at the root. It works in the soil of your inner life first, where no one else can see. Help has already arrived. Not as a dramatic rescue that lifts you out of the fire, but as revelation that lets you see through the flames without being consumed. The problems may still exist for now. The grief may still visit at 3 a.m. The unanswered questions may still sit heavily in your chest. Yet your lens the way you perceive those same difficulties is healing. Colors are slowly returning. Edges are softening. Where once everything felt like threat, now flickers of meaning begin to appear. You are learning. Stay present. Presence is not passivity. It is not resignation. It is not giving up on hope or vision or change. Presence is active partnership with this momenta the only place where grace can actually meet you. You have spent so much energy traveling between past and future. Revisiting what should have been said differently. Replaying what hurt. Rewriting endings that never changed. Or racing ahead into imagined futures, bracing for pain that has not yet arrived, rehearsing conversations that may never happen. Presence calls you back gently. Not to shame you for wandering, but to remind you that life is happening here. This breath. This heartbeat. This quiet awareness of your body existing in space. Even now, as your eyes move across these words and your chest rises and falls, something is happening beneath your awareness. You do not have to manage it. You do not have to understand it. The Holy Spirit works best where there is permission, not pressure. Comfort is being poured into places you did not know were still aching. Alignment is happening where things once felt crooked and forced. Old attachments are being loosened not ripped away, but gently untangled. What would have choked future growth is being pruned with care. What will become foundation is being built slowly, deliberately, in places you once believed were ruins beyond repair. The work is quiet. That is why you often miss it. You expect transformation to announce itself with intensity with a sudden feeling, a dramatic moment, a clear before and after line you can point to and say, a Othir. That is when everything changed. But most holy work does not move that way. It moves like dawn. Incremental. Unimpressive at first glance. And then one day, without knowing exactly when it happened, you realize the light is everywhere. When you feel lost, remember this. Being guided often feels like being lost because you are no longer the one leading. The familiar markers are gone. The old strategies do not work. The sense of mastery you once relied on dissolves. The driver's seat feels empty. The steering wheel is no longer in your hands. That emptiness can be terrifying, especially if you learned early that safety depends on vigilance. But guidance does not require your constant control. It requires your consent. Trust grows not because you understand the path, but because you learn the character of the one who leads. This is not the end. Let that truth rest in you without argument. This is not the end. What you are walking through may feel like suspension like an in-between with no clear exit. But this is not stagnation. It is gestation. A holy beginning often wears the disguise of uncertainty. The Spirit's takeover does not arrive with spectacle. It does not shout. It does not demand attention. It arrives in small hours when the world is quiet enough for you to notice your own breath. It arrives in slow mornings when urgency loosens its grip. It arrives in tiny awakenings, moments of clarity, moments of relief, moments when you choose kindness instead of self-attack, rest instead of proving, honesty instead of performance. These moments accumulate. They do not look like much on their own. But together, they form something unbreakable. You are learning to dwell rather than to do. Doing kept you productive. Dwelling keeps you alive. To dwell is to inhabit your life instead of managing it like a project that might fail if you stop watching it closely. To dwell is to sink roots rather than chase exits. It is to stay long enough for nourishment to reach you. You are learning to listen more than to strive. Striving kept you moving through fear. Listening keeps you connected through trust. Peace is being redefined for you. Peace is not the absence of trouble. It never was. Peace is the presence of a right spirit within trouble. It is the quiet knowing that even when circumstances are loud and confusing, you are not abandoned inside them. Peace is discovered not when everything outside finally aligns, but when something inside settles into truth. When your inner being aligns with what is eternal, storms may still rage you, but they no longer own you. You are safe now. Not because life has become predictable. Not because the horizon is suddenly clear. Not because pain has been permanently removed from your future. You are safe because your spirit has anchored itself in something that cannot be shaken. That anchor is not your discipline. It is not your understanding. It is not your flawless faith or perfect behavior. It is the unchanging nature of the one who promised never to leave. You are being rebuilt quietly. Almost imperceptibly. There is no demolition crew tearing everything down at once. There is patient restoration. Reinforcement. Strengthening from the inside out. You are becoming steady. Peaceful. Not numb, not tadakita, but grounded. Storms may still come. Winds may still howl. But your roots now reach deep enough to draw life even when the surface is dry and the world feels hostile. You asked for the Holy Spirit to take over. Maybe you whispered it because you were afraid of hoping too loudly. Maybe you cried it out in exhaustion. Maybe it was not even fully formed as words, just a feeling, a surrender, a moment when you could no longer carry everything on your own. However it was spoken, it was heard. Heaven does not require eloquence. It responds to honesty. The answer did not come as a single dramatic event. It came as a process. A slow, faithful, mostly unseen transformation. It came not to control you, but to comfort you. Not to erase your humanity with all its mess and contradiction, but to restore your holiness within that humanity. Your weakness is not a liability to the Spirit. It is a dwelling place. The places where you feel most fragile are often the places where grace settles most deeply. You are not the same person you were. Even if you cannot yet articulate how. Something fundamental has shifted beneath the surface. You may still stumble. You may still question. Old fears may still rise at times, familiar and convincing. But beneath all of it, there is a steadiness that was not there before. A softness that does not collapse under pressure. A wholeness that does not depend on having everything figured out. The takeover has begun. And it will not stop. It will continue through clarity and confusion, through joy and grief, through ordinary days that feel forgettable and nights that feel unbearable. It will continue not because you maintain it perfectly, but because love is persistent. Patient. Relentless in the gentlest way. One day, peace will no longer feel like something you visit occasionally, brief moments of relief between stretches of tension. It will become your home. Not a home built by effort or strategy, but by presence. By consent. By the steady, faithful work of the Spirit who moved into what you thought were ruins and decided they were worth restoring. You are safe. Let that truth land again, deeper this time. Not because nothing difficult will ever happen. Not because you finally became strong enough to handle everything. But because you are held. Held quietly. Held constantly. Held irrevocably. By a presence that chose you long before you could choose back, and that presence does not let go. Rest here. There is nothing you need to prove in this moment. Breathe here. Let your body know it is allowed to soften. Be here. This moment is not an obstacle, it is the meeting place. The gentle takeover continues. And it is good. Very, very good.